In the wake of unprecedented numbers of COVID-19 infections and facing a critical shortage of available healthcare workers to cope with the swelling numbers of hospitalizations and deaths, Southern California once again finds itself under a regional stay-at-home order. Enacted by Governor Gavin Newsom, the order took effect at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, December 6th, and required the immediate closure of, among other things, all personal care businesses and outdoor dining, in addition to banning personal gatherings larger than those of immediate household members. In short, the order requires all citizens in the region to remain in their homes except for what are termed essential matters, such as employment and the getting of food and exercise, until further notice. Triggered by a drop in hospital ICU or intensive care unit capacity below a predetermined level of 15%, and now reaching a critical level below 3%, the order remains in effect for a minimum of 3 weeks and could be extended if conditions don't improve. Good evening, and thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Carbonetta, and this is Arroyo Live. Produced by and through the facilities of Pasadena Media, the purpose of this program is to help enrich our community through informative and meaningful conversation. The program is live if you are watching on Tuesday, December 15th, and you can share your questions or comments with us anytime at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org. This evening, we talked to some local restaurateurs for a firsthand account of how COVID-19 is affecting businesses and livelihoods across the region. I'm joined by Mr. Teddy Bedjakian, owner of Edwin Mills Restaurant, Mr. Gregg Smith, co-founder of Smith Brothers Restaurant, and Mr. Bob Harrison, owner of Green Street Restaurant. Welcome to you, gentlemen. We appreciate your being here tonight. If each of you would please take a moment to tell our viewers at home a little bit more about yourselves. Bob, let's begin with you.
Okay. Well, hi, Joe. I'm Bob Harrison, one of the owners of Green Street Restaurant. There's 6 of us. My wife and her brother and his wife, and then their daughter and my oldest daughter. So we have a second generation coming along and actually being part of the restaurant. We've been in business since 1979 here in Pasadena. And so we've been through certainly a lot of things through that time. My wife and I have 5 children, all grown now, and 2 grandchildren. And so when they were younger, I started getting involved in a lot of their activities, and that led to serving with the Pasadena Education Foundation, and then eventually running for the school board. And the citizens elected me to a term there, and I served as president for a year there, and have stayed involved in many nonprofit organizations since that time, and to be part of the community as our restaurant is, and I was personally, as well as my partners.
All right, fantastic. Greg, I guess we'll ask you to go next.
Yes, okay. We opened our first restaurant, believe it or not. None of you were probably alive by then, but in 1974 in La Cañada, it was called Reflections. And we went on to open up another couple of those. And then in 1984, we opened the Parkway Grill, which is still going strong. A couple of years later, we opened the Arroyo Chop House. And then we opened up 24 Crocodile Cafes in 5 different states, which was probably the worst mistake we've ever made in our life, because we had no critical mass. No one had ever heard of us. I got a call on a Friday night from one of our managers in Douglas County, Colorado, saying, "I quit." And I'm here, going, okay. So we thought, hey, let's just get back to Pasadena. This is where we live. We're involved, in a lot of nonprofits here. We're pretty well known. We can get to the restaurants in time. We can eat it. We can smell it. And we know most of our guests. So we now have the Parkway Grill, which is 37 years old. Um, Chop House, 21 years old, 22 years old, and Smitty's, which is about 21 years old.
Definitely quite a bit of experience there. Teddy, again, thank you for joining us, and I'm afraid it's your turn now.
Yeah. Well, Teddy Bedjakian, thank you, Joe, for having me. Owner of Edwin Mills by Equator. Originally, it was Equator, the coffee house, back in the days, and by 2005 is when I got stuck between Starbucks and Coffee Beans War, and I had to make a decision if I wanted to keep it up and going. So I went for the liquor license, won the liquor license through the state lottery, and therefore Equator became the restaurant bar. By 2013, people walked by and said, "Oh, that was a coffee house." So I had to rebrand myself. So then Edwin Alley and Mills Place is at Edwin Mills by Equator. So been here ever since late 90s, I would say. 24 years old, not that old here, but been very involved in the city and the community. Been with the Pasadena Host Lions Club for over 20 years. And I can't see myself living anywhere else but Pasadena. Have my wife and my 3 lovely daughters. So this is where I'll be.
All right. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Clearly, a lot of experience here, and we certainly do appreciate your time. I guess the obvious place to start is that the pandemic has obviously dragged on for a lot longer than anyone initially anticipated. I think it's fair to say that in the early weeks of the pandemic, people thought this might be over in a month or two, and then things would go back to normal. And obviously, as time has dragged on, that has become more and more apparent that that's not going to be the case. In fact, we are almost at the close of 2020, and we're still dealing with the pandemic. Throughout it all, we have seen more than one stay-at-home order. And we've seen the closure of several businesses, several different genres of business along the way. And then we've seen a relaxing in some of the restrictions, only to see them get tightened down and perhaps made even more strict. How is this affecting each of you and your businesses?
Bob,
Well,
you want to go?
I'll start. I would say it's been devastating. We were rolling along. Like I said, we've been around since 1979. We had 75 employees back in February. And when the first slowdown or shutdown occurred, we had to furlough about half of them. And then came even more restrictions. And so we're down to where we're operating now with about 30 of our people. And so from that standpoint, it's been devastating for so many. We can, in the restaurant business, you can control how much food you buy to serve the amount by projecting how many people you think you're going to be. You can control how much liquor or napkins and linens and things that you have. But what you can't control are things like rent that you're in a long-term lease with. And with each one of these restrictions, instead of, paying rent on a 6,000 square foot building, we're using, less than a quarter of it. And yet the bill is still there. And I think that's probably what many of us in the restaurant business are facing with if you're in a lease situation with landlords. And of course, you feel for the landlord, they've got bills to pay too. So, we're trying to negotiate and pay for some of their hard costs and that sort of a thing, and trying to get some relief on some of the other part. But it's a tough road.
All right. Gentlemen, anybody else want to add to that?
Yes, we got I think it was March 15th, just out of the blue, with no time to prepare whatsoever, that we would be closed the next day, which was the 16th, without any notice whatsoever. And like Bob, we have 3 restaurants employ hundreds of people. And so what we had to do, first of all, was furlough, a lot of our people. Probably we support 200 or 300 families. And after a week or two or three, I had, some of our servers and some of our bussers who were married and that have families come up to me with tears in their eyes. We can't pay our rent. We can't pay our mortgage. My husband or my wife has lost their job too. What are we supposed to do now? We were furloughed. And then all of a sudden, I believe it went, okay, you could open up back inside.
Yeah.
Social distance, which I thought was brilliant because there wasn't any occupancy requirements because the social distancing took care of it all. And people loved it. And they sort of like being a little further apart. Not only because of the safety, but just had a nicer feel to it. And so we were and then we bought thousands of dollars worth of plexiglass because the plexiglass was now tripled the cost of what it was prior to the pandemic because it was supply and demand. So I spent a lot of money on that, and then 2 weeks after that, well, whoops, we changed our mind. So now you're going to have to go outdoors. And like everyone else, just us, we spent in excess of $100,000 on our outdoor dining at Parkway and Chop House alone, not including Smitty's. And 95% of the guests that I spoke to were thrilled with the outside dining. And I heard over and over and over again, you should keep this all year long. You should keep this all year long. We much prefer this while your inside is very beautiful. This is the best. It's like dining in Paris. And so then with that affirmation, we went above and beyond and made it more of a French garden. And people loved it. And
but now, of course, everything is shut down again.
Well, and if I don't want to blow my whole wad on this whole thing, but I don't think that there is one shred of evidence, zero, that socially distanced outside dining has caused even one infection of the virus.
Well, that's definitely something we want to address a little later on in the program.
Yeah.
But back to
so then we were told, whoops, just kidding. You can't do that. So now all of our outside dining all over the city is
cut down.
I mean, after all this. And if I can just say one more thing, I'm not trying to hog the show. We are so thankful for the new Mayor Gordo, City Manager Steve Mermel, all the City Council, Chief Perez, Chief Frieder, and the city staff, who, boy, you would call them and they were out in a heartbeat. And their only mantra was, we want to get you back open as quickly as possible. So, I mean, they had faith in us. They had our backs. So we wanted to repay the gesture, and we have their backs. And we didn't want them to be embarrassed because they had a lot at stake. So, you know, it was a great team effort.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Teddy, I'd like to bring you into this conversation as well. But more than just talking about how the closure itself has affected you, I was hoping you might also elaborate on something that Gregg just touched on, which are all of the additional expenses that just about every restaurant owner, every business owner has incurred as a result of this pandemic. Creating an outdoor eating area where one didn't exist, attempting to add partitions, forcing social distancing, limiting the amount of patrons that can be in there at one time, which obviously is going to affect your bottom line. I was hoping you could talk a little about all of those things.
Well, I tried to do my best to go minimum on the expenses, but it didn't work. And I'll tell you why, because the minute that they set us outdoors, you know, on the West Hollywood and all that area, you will see that there's a plexiglass dividing the tables side to side next to the customers, which I thought was a great idea. But according to our health department, we can't do that. So that's a waste of money right there. Then we had the fires. Well, with the fires came the ashes. So I said, okay, I would have, without covering tents, I would have been okay. So I had no choice but to get tents because of the ashes were falling in the food during a little fire that we had across here. So then I got the tents and everything else set up. Then the minute that we got barely an approval for heaters, right? Because propane heaters weren't allowed because it has to be 5 feet away from a main street. And Mills Alley is considered still a street. It's not an alley. So by the time we got the approval for the propane tanks, for the heaters, I spent all the money on electrical outlets would burn because they were only 15 amp and I had to have a 20 amp, 25 amp. So he called electricians, changed all the outlets outside. And it was just, it was hectic. It was hectic because especially the tables and chairs that you have, you know, thank goodness to me, I called my little Paris because I could set up all the tables and chairs that I want. I went ahead and bought new tables and chairs also to have on the side. It's just, it was nonsense. All that money that we spent is just craziness. But we had a little joy for a little while, you know. So.
Well, certainly with the holidays upon us, it isn't even fair to say approaching anymore. They're upon us. These are generally considered periods of time where you would make quite a bit of your annual income. With shoppers out and about, the natural inclination is to just grab a bite to eat while you're out. So this is presumably a time where you see a lot of business usually. So how devastating is this? And I ask this to each and every one of you. How devastating is this to not be allowed to remain operational? I mean, I realize that takeout is still an option, but that accounts for a relatively small amount of business. How devastating is it to have to be closed during the holidays?
Well, you have to understand, Joe, I'm in the heart of old Pasadena, right? Versus, you know, Bob's in the South Lake District and Gregg is down on Arroyo and the South Lake. But usually in old Pasadena during these times, not to count for that, we lost all the Christmas parties, the tourism because of the Rose Parade that they come down. Our biggest moneymaker is the Rose Bowl games and all the tourists that are sitting at the hotels nearby. I mean, not seeing nothing from them. And then when you talk about to-goes, which I like to call the little mafia, which is the Grubhub and the Postmates when they take your 30% from you. You know? How does that work when you have, let's say, on a Friday night you do 7,000, 8,000 right now with all these people that were open, to dropping down to $280 a day, maybe $300 a day through Postmates and Grubhub? we weren't known as a restaurant to go. I was stuck in signing up at this last moment out of desperation to see how they work. And if you leave it up to me, I get rid of it. It didn't make sense to me. You know, my initial staff that I let go, which was 17, I told them not to come back. I said, you rather stay home and milk the system because the system is killing me. I said, the new staff that I hired, these were the kids that couldn't even get unemployment since March because EDD is so screwed up. And then why would I want my old staff back when we had shutdowns because of rioters, curfew set, excuses after excuses. So the new staff was a wonderful staff. They were thankful that they had a job. And again, here we go. Back to them trying to get approved EDD, which they can. So that's what I did is when my last day of shutting down on Sunday, I gave all my sales to the staff. And it's not much if you really divide amongst 19 of them that I have. But it's something at least for them to have for Christmas.
But again, that creates more economic devastation for you and your business because you still have all of the operating expenses and you're recouping none of that because you were generously giving that to all of your staff. Bob, Greg, same question to each of you in turn, if you wouldn't mind. How devastating is this to not be open during the holidays?
Well, I'll tell you what at Green Street, we've always had a pretty robust takeout program. It probably accounted for a third of our sales, a year ago when we were going along. So that part of the transition hasn't been that difficult. Our menu is such that it really makes takeout very easy. And you can still get the great flavors, and our Diane salad travels really well and such. So that is still very popular. The big difference is, as part of that third of our sales, though, was every day we had 2 vans that we would load up with salads, big bowls of salad and trays of sandwiches to going out, and we had all the different meetings and then parties and weekends parties, even weddings and such that were using our services. None of that is there anymore. So we've lost that a huge part. At this time of year, every day was huge because of both the large parties that were coming to the restaurant to have office parties or family parties. Either they were coming in or we were taking food to their house. And that is pretty much done. We've adapted our menu and such so that you can order a family meal for 4 or 5. But that's, far different than the daily meetings of 15 or 20 people or, a baby shower on the weekend for 30 people and all those kinds of things, or birthday party celebrations. Those are the things that are gone, and you just don't, you don't get that back. You can't make up for what a week of that week between Christmas and New Year's was always one of our busiest weeks because you had tourists coming in, but you also had a lot of people that had used to live here and come back because of family or whatnot, and would always come back in because they had come here for so many years and we were part of their routine and part of their traditions. And we won't get that, so you can't, you look at a week and you say, how do you make that up? You really can't, because there isn't the outside events that like a Rose Bowl game or a Rose Parade and all of those things that are driving people into the city. And then of course, restaurants were such a big part of all those traditions.
Greg?
On our part, we have 6 private rooms in our 3 restaurants, combined. And I mean, like Teddy and Bob, we boy, Christmas time is when we fill up those rooms. We'll fill them up each, 2 each at lunchtime and 2 each at dinner time. I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And that's gone. And it's not only the restaurateurs, but the poor retailers. Some of them in the month of December do 40 or 50% of their volume.
Yeah.
We've got in Pasadena, like a little dress shop that might see 12 customers a day are closed. Yet you can go shoulder to shoulder at Target or Walmart or Costco. Some are wearing masks, some aren't. They're touching the same fruit. They're touching, the same packages. They're not social distancing at the cash register, but yet, and hundreds of people, yet a little dress shop or a little restaurant like ours that are totally social distanced. I just don't understand it. And I don't know if anyone does, because it seems like the politicians are catering to the big box, big corporations rather than the small businessman.
Well, Gregg,
And I don't think any of us appreciate that.
you've touched
Now,
on
let me just say, we are all committed to keeping our staff as healthy as possible, our guests as healthy as possible. We are going above and beyond, and I think all of us have the protocols. And but we're the ones that are the cause of everything. It certainly can't be the protests or the Lakers or the Dodgers. It's all the small restaurant, it looks like, and we're the ones that are being penalized.
Well, Gregg, again, you bring up something that we wanted to touch on this evening, and that really is, what is the feeling among the small business community, and I'm sure that includes many restaurants. Is there a feeling of inequity in the way decisions are made on what is considered an essential business versus what is not essential?
I certainly think so.
I think what we've proven is trying to make public policy during the middle of a crisis doesn't work. Because what happens is, as soon as a policy is made and there's any kind of pushback here or so, there's changes to it or so in the communication. It's like, you're listening to the state and then the county and then the city, and you have all these different things. Then you get the, look at the CDC monitors. And sometimes they're all saying different things. Now this week we get new regulations from Cal OSHA. And that's where I think that's where Gregg was going, is that sometimes these policies seems rather arbitrary, and what was proven. I should say also, like Gregg said, none of us want to operate in an unsafe environment. And that's why we've put all the money into making it more safe. And we've added, the ultraviolet light before our machines, and our air conditioning units, and brought in bigger units that will move the air around. Right now it's working well, and but that helps keep our employees safe. So we're all very interested in that. But the Restaurant Association brought suit against the county when they first made this, tried to close down restaurants for not operating on the patio. And the judge made the county come back and show the data that proved that restaurants and outdoor dining was the cause of the spread, and they couldn't do it. And the judge ruled against them and said, yeah, it was totally arbitrary. And I think that's what we're faced with constantly, is that the regulations that are being passed down seem rather arbitrary. And unfortunately, I think those of us in the restaurant business feel like we've been picked at on this, and then they don't have the data to back it up, to back up their decisions, make it very frustrating.
But Bob, also one more thing, don't forget, they make us wear the mask, they make us wear the shield, they make us wear the gloves, they make us put hand sanitizer in every corner of the place. But yet we are the problems. When you go to Roger, Costco, or anywhere you go, they have food, they have everything, but they don't have the shield. Yes, they have a face mask, but we are the ones that are being the most monitored. not only by the health department, it's the health department with the code enforcement walking in Old Town and an officer to back them up. Every night when we had the outdoor seating, I mean, they're watching us like hawks, and I respect that. I'm not saying nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But don't throw us in the middle in the mix saying that we are the problems where we are the most watched over and looked at and closed down right away. Not, hey, put the mask up. No, you're shut down. Till you go to the pay your fines, another hearing, then we'll allow you to open up.
If you gentlemen will permit me to play devil's advocate for just a moment, is it fair to say that perhaps the reason they quote unquote target your industry a little more than others would be because it is more of a social setting, and especially where the consumption of food is concerned, patrons are actually required to remove their masks for some period of time. So perhaps there is a slight increase in safety issues as a result of that. Certainly because there's no way for you to know every individual that comes through whether or not they've been exposed.
Yeah, but Joe, they're taking their face mask off when they're sitting in front of their lover or their friend face to face. We still have the safety gears on. We are not, me especially as a host that will go table to table, touch tables, wearing a face mask and a shield, going to the tables. It's no different than them having their masks on, being at Target, going to Starbucks, having their juice and drinking it right there while in line with the rest of the people, shoulder to shoulder, not 6 feet. They're not being monitored. They're not being controlled. Nobody's telling them, hey, you're not 6 feet apart. Here they are. Here they're watching our tables. Here they're measuring our tables. So it doesn't make sense at all, Joe. And they can't show how many people got COVID from the restaurants.
Joe, I think your question really is I think is what the regulations are based on of people that do it. And I really feel for the authorities that have to make these decisions, that have this thing on their plate. It's got to be incredibly tough. So I understand that. But that's why I think, and that's what the judge was asking him, well, then show us the data. If we're going to make decisions, let's go with something rather than just sitting in a room and saying, well, because people are gathering over here, that can't be good. And we have control over that. So that's one place we have to go with. Because I think if you look at even the county list, when they put one on their website are the kinds of industries that you're more likely, or percentage wise, of where you might contract this virus. Restaurants were like number 11 down on the list, something like 2.5%, 3% or so. Grocery stores were up there pretty high. Government offices were ahead of us, up there. So it feels arbitrary, I think, still, even knowing, they're trying to do what they think is best. It's just, there's a bigger picture out there, I think, that they have to look at.
Well, time and time.
And I appreciate the enforcement, because it's gotten tougher, and it should. Like I said earlier, the city had a lot of stake, and I commend them for not following LA County. I thought that was wonderful. And they have been into our restaurants and they have caught us on several little things.
Yeah.
Well, we don't think they're so little, so we correct them immediately, and we appreciate their support. What I think, like I said earlier, we support hundreds of families, and right when they were getting their finances back in order, the day before Thanksgiving, they get another gut punch. And now 30,000 restaurants in Pasadena, 30,000 restaurants in the county are out of business, and probably half of them are not going to survive. And what happens to all of their employees?
Yeah.
It's okay,
Greg, if I
For Newsom to eat indoors with 24 people, by the way, not 12, at the French Laundry, and for a county supervisor to cast the deciding vote to ban outdoor dining, but yet 2 hours after leaving the meeting, she's eating outdoors. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Greg, you're as before, you're sort of one step ahead of me here in the conversation, and I was going to ask what might amount to a slightly inflammatory question, but I was going to start out by saying that, you know, time and time again we have been told by authorities that the decisions, as far as restrictions are concerned, have been made based on the science, and as all of you gentlemen have noted, very recently the courts have said that at least in terms of LA County's position, the science doesn't seem to back up the decisions. But my next question was going to be, how does it make you feel? How does it affect the industry when the people making the decisions don't seem to be abiding by the very rules they're creating for the rest of us?
Well, you want me to say something? I'll tell you how screwed up our politicians are of being hypocrites. And I'll tell you the lashback I got from the new generation regarding them. Perfect example. On Instagram, I went ahead and put down calling Gavin Newsom a hypocrite because he was eating at the French Laundry. Lied about, and this is before the pictures came out. I went ahead, there's no way you would be sitting outdoors in Napa at that time of the night. It has to be at least 35, 40 degree weather. There's no way. The next day, the pictures came up. I posted it, called him a hypocrite. I'm in bed with the wife and I'm getting nothing but DMs, direct messages from people talking crap to me. So the next day I went on social media and I started cursing all of them out. I said, you guys are all screwed up. Since when is the nice person, the person who's trying to tell people that they're hypocrites, all of a sudden the good guy becomes the bad guy, and the bad guy is the good guy? It's like the times have changed where I don't even know anybody anymore. Pelosi doesn't wear a mask, goes to the hair salon. It's okay because that's Pelosi. Gavin Newsom lies. He's outdoor, there's social distancing. Pictures come out and people seem to forgive him. And for me to say something about it, I become the bad, evil person.
And they're not outdoors. They were eating indoors, and not with 12 people, but it's come out with 24 people. Exactly. And I don't think they were all in the same household.
So I went ahead and in social media and I said, F you to the health department, F you to all this, because you're letting them get away with it because they're a 5 Michelin star kind of a place. And as small business people here that are barely trying to survive, you guys are on top of us. And I told the inspectors when they came with the code enforcement, I said, hey, those are 7 people, because they wrote me up because I had 7 people at a table, which I didn't know one person joined them. And I said, but Gavin Newsom had 15 or 12, supposedly. Oh, that's Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask another potentially inflammatory question, and I apologize for putting you gentlemen on the spot. I'll understand if you don't want to answer this.
We love it.
Well, I wonder what each of you would say to those restaurateurs. We have seen several in the media recently who have basically done exactly what Teddy was just alluding to, just telling the government officials that they're just not going to abide by these rules any longer. And several businesses have thrown their doors back open and basically flaunting the laws and waiting to be shut down. I'm wondering what you gentlemen have to say about that.
Well, Joe, if you're standing on your last string, if you already are losing everything that you have, like, see, I can't make that decision because they got me by the balls because of the ABC license, which took me a hard time to get in Pasadena. But if you're standing on your last livelihood, that you have to make a decision, am I closing my doors tomorrow? Or am I going to just risk it? Screw them. I'm going to file BK anyway. I'll take their fines. I'll take their penalties. I'll just risk everything all, and I know I'm gonna make at least what I owe on my liquor license, or else my doors are closed. What other choice do I have? So those are the people that say, screw it, I'm gonna do it. I'll be on the media, I'll get all the customers, I'll make all the money. Then the next day I'll go and file BK.
Yeah.
We will follow every guideline. We will be the good citizens. We want our staff to be healthy. Like I've said, we want our guests to be healthy. And we have, like I've also said, we have exceeded protocols in a lot of areas and have spent a lot of money doing it. So we are going to play by the rules. We have no intentions of being the antagonist, but we just hope that pretty soon, the people that are making these laws are going to come to their senses. And I don't know if they will or not, but I predict that if this goes on into January or February, I'll go right on a limb and say 50% of the restaurants are not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I would, to answer your question, Joe, I wouldn't, I'm not going to pass judgment on whatever another business does. But I know in our case, we're like Gregg. We're going to follow the regulations. We're going to do this. I think our guests expect us to do that as well. If I might add, I didn't get a chance to weigh in on what I thought of the but when I was elected to the school board, the second day, the day after I got elected, I got a letter at my home, and it said, "To the Honorable Robert Harrison." And I thought, oh my God, you win an election and all of a sudden automatically you're honorable. I took that though to be, okay, this is the expectation of the community that you're there, you're now honorable. And I got to do things to live up to that title. And that's what's so disappointing when you see the people that are saying one thing and then doing something completely opposite, because they are not being honorable. And so that's a huge disappointment. Especially for people, in some of the cases, I know I probably voted for the person and supported them, and huge disappointment.
Well, I certainly appreciate your thoughts there. I wanted to shift the conversation ever so slightly, because so far we've talked about the businesses and the economic devastation that is brought by that. And I think for so many viewers at home, when they hear a restaurateur talking about the closure, they assume that as a restaurant owner, you're talking about the loss of profits that you personally are seeing. But there's a more human side to this story that I'd also like to touch on. And that's the fact that while you certainly you are a business owner, you're also an employer, and you have an awful lot of staff in many cases that depend upon you for their own livelihoods. So I was hoping that each of you might take a moment to discuss that and how devastating that has been for each of you, having to furlough or in some cases lay off staff permanently.
Well, I could go ahead on this one. It hurts. And I'll tell you why it hurts, because you're not considered, especially me, just with the one location, it's not considered to be an employee. When you see these people every day, you start forming like a form of a family, a closeness, watching each other's back. And all my staff members know I have no problem washing dishes, no problem cleaning up tables to bring in another customer right away. Therefore, it helps them out with their tips. Now, I don't think there's anybody out there that worries about, the money we're making. No, this is a house where I'm providing income for the 19 employees that I have, for example. They depend on me. My mistake of not following the rules of getting shut down affects everybody. all their rents, their bills, their children, everybody depends on me. That is a lot of pressure for a restaurant owner that has to carry on top of him, worried about all his staff. That is the only reason, for example, my last Sunday, like I said, I gave all the sales to the staff because you care for them. You establish this relationship that other people can't see. And they can't ultimately blame the owner of, oh, because of the money. No, yes, it's the money, but that money helps my family just like their money helps their family. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think we all feel that way. Gregg's touched on it earlier. I remember when it first happened, back in March, and immediately that was my first thought: is what are we going to do with the people that I know we can't support there because we're only going to be bringing in half of what we were bringing in before. So it's really tough. And at that time, thinking, I remember in the first few weeks, somebody said, I heard somebody on TV saying this thing could last till June. And I'm thinking, June, no way. And here we are, December. So it's really tough from that. And it's not just even our own places. I mean, if we buy a lot of wine from small family-owned restaurants. Well, we're not buying that wine right now. Or our meat purveyor is a small guy in Montrose, family run. Obviously, our bill now is 40% of what it was there. So now he has to adjust his income and how many employees he can hire or stay employed. So it's really, you used the word devastating. I think that's probably a pretty good word.
Yeah.
Gregg, did you have any further thoughts on that yourself? I saw you nodding in approval there.
Well, I was nodding in approval. We have, like Teddy and Bob at Parkway Grill, 37 years. We have some of our same people that were there opening night. Now, in those days, they had black hair. Now they have gray hair like mine. Yeah. But they have been around a long, long time. And this is the only job they've had almost their whole life. And they have raised their families, their children on the income that they make at our restaurants. And now, in my opinion, willy-nilly, no data, no scientific evidence whatsoever. It came out, I think in court either last Tuesday or Wednesday, that the real reason that there's no more outside dining is they just wanted to keep people at home. So here are our staff going into Christmas, no pay. And it's based on probably relatively nothing, in my opinion. Yes, we want to keep everyone safe, but that's what we're trying to do. But as I said, you can go into Target and all the big box corporations, and it doesn't seem to be a problem at all. So I don't know.
Right. Well, to bring the conversation back almost full circle to where we started out, in the earlier portions of the pandemic, there was a big push on the part of the federal government and even some of the state governments to put together aid packages to help not only the average citizen, but the small business owners. We've, of course, in subsequent months heard reports that some of that was mishandled, but at least there was some kind of an attempt. Did any of that prove helpful to any of you gentlemen? And more importantly, we haven't seen so much in the way of an aid package in recent months, even though this has dragged on for some time. Would that not be beneficial for all of you at this point as well? And again, I'd like to ask each of you those questions.
Well, Joe, I'll go ahead and start on this one. We don't get EDD as a restaurant owner. I didn't get any aid. We got the EDIL, which was a $10,000 forgiveness loan, supposedly. 2 months later, a month later, I applied for the PP loan, the payroll protection program. That was supposed to be forgiven. So I submitted to the bank. It was only what, 31,000? So I submitted it to the bank. The bank came back and told me, okay, so 21,000 of that is forgiven. Sends me the government letter that they sent me. They're using the 10,000 that they gave to me prior to that as a forgiveness loan, minus the PPP. So now I owe the 10,000 to the bank. It was only 21,000 excused. And then as far as for restaurants that we work our asses off on, we don't get any help. I didn't see any help because I had to apply for the SBA loan from the government. And the max you get on that is what, 150? And you have to pay it back in 30 years. So, and if you apply for that one, any other grants that you're trying to get, on my case, it wouldn't get approved. So that's the situation I'm at. And then the boys could put their inputs in there.
The original PPP loan did help us, but it was designed for 8 weeks. And you had to, you had limits on, what you could spend it on, but also for how long. So that would certainly helpful. I would like to see more of that. Certainly, I think that's a place where, along with the regulations that are passed, they could provide funds as well, for particularly, smaller independent businesses that need it and employ an awful lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's our lifeline.
Yeah.
We got a couple of rounds of PPP, and boy, was that a big help. And don't know where the third round is, or whether there will ever be a third round, but that kept a lot of us in business. And so I don't know where we go from here.
Yeah, there was even a specific, and I think the House passed it, $188 billion. That was primarily, it was said as the Restaurant Act, and but it hasn't gone any farther from there or gotten approval yet. And maybe it'll be tied up in some of these other discussions they're having. But I don't know if, we only know what we read or hear, but it seems like that kind of, the progress on that changes every day as far as what's being proposed, what's being agreed upon and negotiated. And so who knows?
Yeah.
Well, we are coming close to the end of the program, but I did want to ask also, is there a way back from this? Will your businesses be changed forever, or do you foresee a time where perhaps things will be as they once were?
I think there's a chance of that. We've got to get this, the virus under control, and we're very hopeful with the vaccine coming through, knowing that that's still going to take a long time. But, I think people are yearning to get back in the restaurant. I hear it all the time from people. We have such a long time clientele and so supportive. We did a gift card sale over the Thanksgiving weekend, and offered people a small percentage just so they could go online and purchase a gift card. We wanted to do it for them, but it was also a way for us to generate some cash over a 4-day period. We sold over 300 gift cards online in those 4 days for people that, wanted to use it for a gift or just hang on to it and use it with us as the year comes up. So I think people are anxious to get back out there, and eventually, things are going to change. We're all learning different things. We all might have, slightly different business models and such. But I think the real core of restaurants, of people coming together and meeting friends and enjoying a meal together or with your family, is such a core value of and tradition for people that it will come back. I'm just hoping all of us are still there to service those people.
Yeah, my feeling is like I stated, 95% of the guests at the tables love the al fresco dining and want us to keep it into perpetuity. And I hope that the city is listening and that they will help us find a way to do that. We are, I mean, at our restaurants, our clientele is younger than it was. It seems like they are rediscovering some of our restaurants, and they love it, and they love the outdoors. And if there's any silver lining at all, you know, this could, we could come out on the good side. We're all trying our hardest.
All right.
I mean, to my thing is, my customers love the outdoors. They love the fact that I used to have live music outdoors, made them feel like they were out in Paris or somewhere different, because people are tired of being stuck at home.
Yeah.
You have to look at it. The depression rate, the suicide rate, everything, alcoholic drinking at home, everything has gone up. Why has it gone up? Because they're stuck between the four walls. They can't go anywhere else. But in order for them to go out, in order for them to see fresh air and meet people, and I always said that, enjoy, we follow all the safety protocols. But if you're still thinking about it, then stay your ass home. Don't come to the restaurant, I told people. I said, go out and enjoy yourself. But if you're still freaking out a year from now and you're deciding not to go out, you're only hurting yourself because of fear. We're following every safety protocol. We're doing everything the right way. Enjoy life. Life's too short.
All right. Well, thank you, Eddie. We've got less than 30 seconds left. Really quickly, I want to ask this one question. The current predictions are that we won't see the vaccine getting around to everybody until the middle of next year, of 2021. How much longer can each of you gentlemen hang on if things stay exactly the way they are? Very, very quickly.
We can hang on. We're pretty conservative. We have stockpiles some cash, and I mean, it's not going to last forever, but we feel pretty good about it right now.
All right. Well, we'll have to go with that. I thank you, gentlemen, each and every one of you. Teddy, Bob, Greg, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time and your insight on this ongoing pandemic.
Thank you.
To our viewers at home, if there are topics you would like to see addressed in our discussions, you can email them to us at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org, and we may include them in a future broadcast. Until next time, this has been Arroyo Live. I'm Joe Carbonetta. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Thanks, guys.